And there we go. Now what I'm going to do is share my screen, and this is a presentation. Please let me know when that screen comes up.
There we go. Yep, it's sharing.
Good. I have to actually hit the share button. Okay. So welcome. This is a presentation for Project Impact. It's an earthquake home retrofit program. We're about to begin, and I've started recording. The presentation is a little over half an hour, and then there'll be a couple of pauses for questions, and then we'll have a general question and answer that's open to any questions after. And you're welcome to either raise your hand or type into the chat anytime. You will be muted if you come into the meeting. If you need to unmute yourself, you're welcome to, but it's sometimes better to stay muted to keep the background noise. And we're probably going to have limited video. If you want to just keep your video off while we're doing the presentation, it'll probably help with lag time. Okay, everyone hear me? All right, let's get started. Okay, so I'm working for the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, SDCI. This is our purpose, and I've been working there for about 15 years, helping people build a safe, livable, and inclusive Seattle. I have pretty familiar with background in construction and as a residential contractor, and I've worked to become a subject matter expert specifically in seismic retrofits and in residential seismic retrofits, which is a type of strengthening to the existing building. So when I say retrofit, I mean to make alterations to an existing structure to make it more resistant to seismic forces or earthquake loads. With me today is April Botman-Haas. She's also a permit process leader, great background in architecture, and has been with us for over 2 years. April, thank you for your help today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great. So our objectives today are to try to help you understand kind of what the project impact program is, describe why this program is needed and why it's a good thing, and also where it applies. We're going to go over kind of what homes qualify and how to use the free detailed prescriptive plan set that is part of Project Impact. All right. So feel free to type your question in the presentation chat or raise your hand. Now, if you want to raise your hand, you can do that next. If you have the participants open, you can do that next to your participant name. Or if you go down to the reactions or the smiley face with the little plus shown on the right hand side there, if you click on that, it has the option to raise your hand. So let's give that a try. Raise your hands if you were in Seattle when the Nisqually earthquake hit. That was in February 2001.
We got one. Rick
Okay.
was here.
My hand will definitely be raised. Rick, you got one?
Stephanie was here. Yep.
Okay, great.
I was not here.
No, where were you at, April?
I was in New York City.
A little far away to feel the shocks, probably.
Yeah. Looks like
In the
we got Donna too. We got three people with their hands raised. Is that it?
eh,
Anybody else?
Great. Now, in the chat, has anyone ever been in an earthquake?
Mm.
And if so, where were you at? Were you at home? Were you at work? Were you in a tunnel? Let's just see if the chat is working here.
Yeah, we got San Francisco. Kimberly was at home in San Francisco
Oh, wow.
and at school at home.
Uh-huh.
Stephanie.
Okay.
In the early 60s in West Seattle. That's from Rick. And then Rose says she was at home.
Okay. And I remember there have been several earthquakes in Seattle, and I'm not familiar with the one in the 60s, but I was pretty young then, so.
Yeah, some people were in the office
Uh-huh.
or Northridge in 93.
Right.
One other person mentioned Washington, D.C. at work. Joanne mentioned, oh, at Children's Hospital
Oh, that's interesting,
in the
yeah.
60s. That was, not, in 2001. And
Okay.
then
That would be the Nisqually. Yeah.
Jim was four times at home in San Diego in the 60s and one in San Francisco in the 90s,
Oh,
in
wow.
1990. And San Diego also.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
lots of Californian earthquakes there.
I can see the enthusiasm for earthquake retrofit. Sounds like we've had a lot of people who've actually
Yeah.
been in an earthquake. So I usually ask the question, are there any engineers here if I'm going to have to watch my math? But the purpose of this presentation is for mostly homeowners. So we're going to keep it fairly simple, but engineers, architects, and contractors are all welcome. The Office of Emergency Management has information specifically for contractors. But what we're looking at today is general understanding of what the program is. And let me talk to you a little bit about our agenda.
Donna has her hand raised. I just want to make sure she didn't have anything she wanted to say
Sure.
that was left over from earlier.
Yeah, that sounds great, April. Any
Nope,
question,
so
Donna? When I ask, you can welcome to type it into the chat or to unmute yourself.
yeah.
Chat works great too,
I
if
think she
both of you
unraised
are
her
on it.
hand, so
Okay.
yeah, we're good.
Everybody's got their hands down, and probably everybody kind of knows a little bit about what a subduction plate is, what a fault line is, and knows that Seattle has several. The USGS has great maps and great information kind of about it, and they've updated it fairly recently. So the first thing is, if there's an earthquake, be prepared. Um, Building safety and project impact is part of that. It's part of making a more disaster resistant community. If you're prepared and your family's prepared, and we can work on creating a housing stock and older houses that are retrofitted, it makes for a more resilient community. We're talking a little bit about the history of Project Impact and what the purpose of the program is, and then what houses are needed. Again, I'll come back to this repeatedly. Where Project Impact is done for a house is to anchor the house to the foundation, brace those first floor or lower floor walls below the first floor, and connect the first floor framing and the framing of the house to the foundation. The Project Impact is a prescriptive plan set, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to apply and resources to do that. So probably when you were in school and do an earthquake drill, they talked about stop, drop, and hold, or drop, cover, and hold is what it's called now. Another one is beneath, beside, or between. Get beneath something that can protect you from falling debris, beside a couch or beside an object to help protect you, or between something. It used to tell you to go and stand in a good structural doorway, and that's not something you want to do. Also, if you're downtown, it may not be a good time to exit. If you get out into the street, there may be falling debris or falling glass. So the idea is to take care of yourself and protect your family. And then especially at home, you probably want to have a personal preparedness kit. Um, Water, food, flashlights. One thing a lot of people don't necessarily think about, have a good pair of shoes in case there's a disaster. Also, you probably want to have a good communication, have a non-local contact. If your family is separated, if you're at school and at home and at work, it's really good to have somebody who is outside the disaster area, outside the area code, who you can all contact and say, I'm fine, I'm in the classroom, or I'm fine, I'm still at work. They're going to have us go home in an hour, or, they're keeping us here until the streets are clear, stuff like that. If you can't make a phone call, texts get through better than a phone call. The packets of information are smaller, and so sometimes the text will work on a strained or overwhelmed network where a phone call won't. One thing that's added to this slide is to have a power bank, have some type of a charger. We recommend that you have something to charge your phone if the power is going to be out. And this is something that's developed over time. Okay. Brief history of the Project Impact Program. Somebody mentioned earthquakes in the 60s and San Diego and San Francisco as well. In the 1994 Northridge earthquake, a set of drawings was developed based on a prescriptive method for holding the buildings to the foundations. And that's really where Project Impact got started. Um, this engineered kind of pres- uh, prescriptive plan set uh, moved up the West Coast and was adopted by several jurisdictions, and Seattle was one of them. Project Impact started and became really popular after the Nisqually quake, um, 2000, 2001, and 2002. It was funded by FEMA, and they encouraged a lot of people to do retrofits based on this prescriptive method. Recently, FEMA has updated their emergency drawings, and WABO has worked to, WABO has worked to revise those drawings and adapt them for the Washington state, make them as widely applicable as possible, and Seattle is in the process of approving those. So it is an update to an older project impact plan set, and you're actually going to get a chance to see some of those pages today. We're looking at probably having this new plan set that is got a bit of a broader application, hopefully about the middle of this year. They say March, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's probably going to be more like April or May, but we'll see. And I'm really excited to be part of that and to be part of what Seattle's trying to do to update and to make this program more applicable to more houses. So the idea of that plan set and of Project Impact is to strengthen existing homes. So promote public safety, improve the resistance, and you'll see where the damage is on this picture here. The damage is at the ground, where the foundation and the ground moves and the house can't keep up, or the house is literally shaken off the foundation. We're looking at trying to simplify the permit process for retrofitting existing homes and making it easier for homeowners and people who are not engineers or architects to retrofit their homes. This won't earthquake proof your home, but it'll make it better to improve resistance in a seismic event. Specifically, it'll improve it right there at the base. This program is designed to work with a typical two-story wood-framed home. It will not work necessarily with brick homes or with brick foundations. If you have an older house that has a concrete masonry unit foundation, or if you have an older brick home, this may not be the program for you. There are other options available, but this would be something that is for a typical two-story wood home. Here are a couple examples. The one in the upper right there is a great craftsman home that was from the Northridge earthquake. You'll see most of the damage is to the first floor. The reason they have a red tag there next to the door is because the plumbing, the gas, and the sewer were all cut off. The house itself is, the stairs still work, the windows aren't broken, but and then the house on the left shows that too, just right off of that low foundation wall. Um, the low foundation wall, or sometimes what they call a pony wall or a cripple wall, that is where the work is needed, and that's where Project Impact really focuses the improvements. They work on the foundation connection, the connection between that first floor framing, and then the cripple wall itself, and then the cripple wall's connection to the first floor and to the foundation. Project Impact tends to focus on exterior walls, so not necessarily interior walls. Are there questions?
None at the moment.
Okay,
People can feel free to type into the chat and or raise their hand if they would like.
thank you. And I do want to remind people, if you've come in, there is closed captioning available, and we are recording. So good question that a lot of people start with is, do I need to retrofit my home? It depends on kind of when your house was built. If the house was built after the early 80s, it may already have the anchors, bracing, and connections. If your house could be considered a classic or a craftsman house or mid-century modern, then you may need a retrofit. More information on this is available online through our website or through King County records as to when the house was built, or if there are any permit history on work already done to the house. So the house on the left there is the Hiram Burnett house, built in 1865. That one would definitely need a retrofit. On the right is a group called Sustainable Connections. It is a modern infill housing, and it's, I think, in Ballard. That's one of the skinny houses there on the lots that are 25 feet total in width. So that house is probably 15 or 20 feet wide. But you'll see that one has a full foundation. That one probably has good connections to the foundation and to the pony wall if there is one. When I mention mid-century modern or craftsman, here are examples of both. Typically, these older houses didn't have adequate anchorage or bracing. All right. So one question I actually forgot to ask, does anybody know where the Hiram Burnett house is? It is the black and white photo on the left there with the interesting stairway. You can recognize one of a pretty famous church behind it. Anyone?
Not yet. It's a tricky one.
It is.
Oh wait, we got one person that's asking. Stephanie said Capitol Hill.
Capitol Hill's a good guess. It is closer to downtown, actually. That, as a hint, that there is behind it is the first. What is it? Um, I wrote it down. I think the first Methodist Episcopal Church that was built 1906, 1907, about 50 years after the house,
Oh.
a little under. And then the house itself is on 4th Avenue, believe it or not. That is on the corner of 4th and Columbia, literally across the street from the Columbia Tower and right next to what is now called the Rainier Building or the Rainier Club. So the house was demolished at one of the Rainier Club's renovations, and it eventually became kind of their um, what is it? Their southern entrance. I think it's a parking lot now.
It's crazy to think of houses like that downtown.
Yes, and in fact, some of these were dragged up to Capitol Hill, depending on what they could put them on. But yeah, so I don't think the stairway is to code. Not looking very closely, but yeah, no railings and open stairway there down to 4th Avenue. So the work for Project Impact is done in that crawl space or underneath that porch. It is done in a basement or beneath the first floor, and that's really where the focus is. It's also typically done on the exterior walls of the building. So the prescriptive method is to use the exterior walls and have basically 4 exterior wall lines. And those exterior wall lines need to have a certain amount of bracing. They need to have a certain number of anchors into the foundation, and they need to have connection to that first floor. So the prescriptive improvements that I'm talking about are into this specific area. And this is a good example or a picture of kind of what's shown with a basement crawl space. On the left there, you see the concrete foundation wall and the expansion anchors that are drilled through the green sill plate there into that concrete foundation to help hold it down. In the corner, there is a plywood um, shear panel, and then the cripple wall is that wall between the concrete foundation and that wood first floor framing. In the back, you'll see some of the clips that connect that first floor framing, or what they have is steel side anchor plates. So, and the number of these and kind of how long those panels need to be, it depends on how tall that wall is, how tall the cripple wall is. It also depends on if you have 1 or 2 stories above grade. The bigger the house or the taller the house, the more connection there needs to be. The total size of the house increases the seismic weight and the need to have better connections on the exterior walls.
And Stephanie had a question.
Sure.
Stephanie was wondering if there's a finished basement, would the anchors be in that area?
Yes, they can be. What ends up happening with finished basements is usually the anchors are done in areas that are easy to access or easy to fix. So sometimes they will put in anchors. If you have to put in one every 6 feet, then they will put them in on the finished wall and, just go every 6 feet and cut a hole. Other places, they will actually try to come in from the outside of the house. Sometimes it's easier to take the siding off rather than go in and take the interior finish off. Other times they put in a new wall entirely, they refinish the interior, but it really depends on the situation. If they're looking to do very short piers, then it might need engineering in order to make that work.
Jim had a question.
Hmm.
Jim said they're, they have a mid-century daylight basement house sitting on a concrete slab.
Yeah.
Looks like Project Impact is not for this type of house. Is that correct?
Well, Project Impact could be for the house, but it's a little iffy. When I hear a daylight basement, I wonder kind of what the slope is on the outside. If it's over about a 30% slope, or a 30% between the one side of the house to the next, then if that's more than a 30-degree angle, it becomes difficult. A slab on grade, if it is a 7 foot wall, maybe, but that would be iffy. You're right. That would be iffy as a project impact. Daylight basements become difficult because it goes from no pony wall to a very tall pony wall, and the average between the two is usually still fairly large, and you have to have quite a bit. The new project impact plans allow for up to a 7 foot tall pony wall. So there are some daylight basements where that might work, but it would be something that might be, you might need to talk to somebody about. It's a really good
Yeah.
question, especially with daylight basements.
Jim was following up saying that in the front it looks like a one-story house, then the grade drops 8 feet from front to back. So it sounds like it's definitely over a 30% drop. So that would need to be engineered then, huh?
I think that would be over 30%. I think you're exactly right, April. Uh,
Rose was wondering if we could define pony wall and how it relates to the slide you're showing right now.
oh, okay. So I'm going to use the word pony wall, but I'm going to point you to this part in the slide here that says cripple wall. They are the same thing. Some people call it a pony wall because it's not a full height wall, or it's a wall that's partially supported or riding on something. That's how I remember it's a pony wall. It's riding. But a cripple wall is technically something that is not a full height wall. Some people will say it's not a bearing wall. But in the project impact drawings, a cripple wall is on the left there, is a not full height wall. It is the wall between the first floor and the foundation. So when I'm talking about a wall today, that is the most important wall I'm talking about. Interior walls can be called that, but what I'm focusing on for Project Impact is just those walls that are at the outside of the building. It's a great question. Thank you. The interior posts here, you'll see one that's just resting on the ground and one that is actually resting on a concrete base,
Mhm.
and looks like it has a saddle. We recommend to have a concrete base as the one that is shown, the farther one that is shown, and also to have a connection to the beam above,
Mhm.
but that is not part of the project impact. Another thing that is not part of project impact are chimneys or any work to walls that are above the first floor. So if you're doing interior alterations, or if you're doing structural work to help strengthen the building that is on the first floor or second floor, that would not be covered under project impact. It's just not part of the prescriptive plan set. This plan set includes basement floor plans, crawl space floor plans, and details of the foundation, the cripple wall, and the connection to the first floor framing, and then it stops. It is limited to those. So while there's pages of these notes that you can literally pick and choose and circle the ones you want to use, it does not have details of the connection between a stairway, does not have connections to a first floor to second floor, and it does not have details talking about how to connect a or retrofit an existing chimney. Great questions, though.
Yeah. Oh,
Good.
and Rose had one more question. Are diagonal braces required in addition to the shear panels to provide shear capacity or capability?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, the diagonal shear, or they used to do walls where they would inset a shear, a diagonal brace, basically. And those are not part of the Project Impact program. The Project Impact is relying on plywood or oriented strand board, and it acts as a diaphragm. And then the nailing pattern has to go all the way around all four corners and also a certain amount in the field. But the idea is if we connect all four sides, it's going to react better than a single brace.
Mm. Now
So
you need to
yeah,
show
that,
that pretty well in your next slide, don't you?
I think so. But let's see, wall and floor construction, and then yeah. So what we're looking at for the next two, but Rose, a good example is the middle one, the middle picture here. The shear panel is that sheathing panel there on the brace walls below the first floor. So on the left is kind of the anchors into the foundation, and then in the middle is that panel showing how the nails are spaced fairly closely at the top and the bottom and on the sides. And then on the right are the clips that help connect that wall to the first floor framing. Good question.
Hmm.
So Project Impact has a lot of details about this and kind of what shows it, but here are a couple general ones. That is another view of that, the floor frame, let's see here. It looks at number one are the wood structural panels that you were talking about. Number two is the foundation, the sill plate anchorage there, and then number three is the floor framing with a side view of the anchorage, where typically what happens is they drill through the wood sill plate, or they provide a new sill plate and connect it to the foundation using either a mechanical anchor or an epoxy chemical anchor. Both are possible. It kind of depends on the foundation. And if the foundation is of poor quality, either it's epoxy anchors or you may need to do some retrofit on the foundation itself. But we're not going to talk about all of the pages. The Project Impact has 22 pages total with several examples of floor plans, pages, several pages of details. What we're going to look at are the cover sheet, the foundation and retrofit layout sheets, and then the schedule for basically how long those panels need to be. I would recommend checking out the examples. They provide really good overall. If there's something that's close to your basement or your crawl space, you can kind of see what they're looking for. All right. Sheet S0 is really important in that it's kind of the qualifying sheet. It has 11 questions on it. And if any of those questions are no or non-compliant, then the project won't qualify for a project impact program. So these are the questions that really need to get answered first. Um, Details are shown. And then if you are looking for additional information on how to fill this sheet out, I would recommend taking a class through the Office of Emergency Management if they're offering them during COVID. I think they do virtual, but or talking to us. You can always send us a question, or actually we have a new feature which is a live chat. So That is recent, and I'll show you how to connect to that soon. Any questions so far, April?
Nope. Oh wait, one just popped on.
Sure.
Stephanie was asking, how would you know about question number 3?
Question number 3, the dwelling or crawl space and the perimeter is supported on cripple walls, foundation walls, or post and pier. Um, the best way to do it is to take pictures of it, um, or to go and have somebody go into your crawl space with a camera and take pictures of the exterior walls. There may be some details. If there's been work done to the house before, you may get the chance to get floor plans. But if you're looking at the outside of the house, usually you can determine if you have a foundation. If the house has a foundation, then the next thing you want to determine is, what is the foundation sitting on? Is there a sill plate or is there something else? And there are houses in Seattle that don't have a foundation that are put on post and pier, or I saw one that was near Green Lake that was actually on river rock that had been piled up and then cemented together. But
Interesting.
yeah, it was fascinating, but also made for a really strange crawl space because they were kind of triangular shaped, but very stable, had been there for over 100 years. But it was kind of like looking at a river rock, or like an exterior of an old cabin. So if you're looking at the basement, sometimes you can get information from drawings. Sometimes it's good just to take pictures. And now that we're in kind of a digital age, you could show those pictures to us and we could get kind of an idea depending on what we're looking at. I'll show you an example of a crawl space picture later where you can easily see the older framing and then the newer improvements. Okay. Number 3 is a really important question. In fact, let me run through these questions with you on an example. So here is the Admiral's house at what was formerly known as Fort Lawton. Um, this is uh, was a residence technically, and we go through and say, first off, is it a 1 or 2 family dwelling? Is it 2 stories in height? Sure. Looks like there's an attic next to the chimney there, attic windows, but it doesn't look like there's a habitable attic or a complete room up there. Probably a 2-story building. We're going to assume that. Is there a crawl space, basement, or foundation? Well, you look down at the ground and you see there are concrete steps and there's a concrete front porch and front portico there. We look like we have a foundation that is consistent throughout the building. It runs along the sides, down around towards the kitchen entrance in the back there. Yeah, okay. Are the cripple walls under 7 feet tall? So the wall below the first floor. Most definitely. I'm not sure this building has a basement, but if it does, it's probably a full height foundation wall. Yes. Is there under a 30% slope? Is this not a daylight basement situation? Most definitely. This is flat. Does it have a lightweight roof or a brick exterior? Both of those things would add weight to the building and could make it more difficult to use the project impact prescriptive method on it. Well, looks like the roof was replaced with asphalt shingles, and I'm guessing that's probably a stucco exterior or a finished wood framed exterior. So yeah, no brick, light roof. If you have a first floor brick that is not full height, or if there's a brick veneer, as some houses have, it might work, but I would recommend talking to somebody about it here. All right, so maximum square footage. Maximum square footage for project impact kind of maxes out at about 4,000 square feet. That would be 4,000 square feet of building area, first and second floor. It does not include an uninhabitable attic, but it would include um, the heated space inside the building other than the basement. Um, and this one is over that. In fact, this building is 7,300 square feet total. It has a complete ballroom, a secondary kitchen, and was probably used for entertainment as well as the admiral's residence. So, yeah, it's a huge house. It's also really nice to go visit, but this would not qualify as a project impact retrofit. The other reason would be is this house is also now on the National Historic Registry and
Mm.
would need historic approval. All right, so here is an example kind of floor plan. The idea is to show the existing and mark the existing conditions and then show which of the details you're planning on using and where the improvements will happen. One of these, one of the most important is what portion of the exterior walls are going to be used for braced wall panels. There's a minimum number on the exterior walls. Again, this isn't for the interior of that basement or crawl space. It's based on the all of those outside walls. So here, for example, we've got a 16-foot long braced wall panel, and it looks like they need two of those. So there would be 32 feet total along the east and west wall lines, as well as the north and south.
And there's this example is in the packet.
Yes, of all of this. In fact, there's an example of one that has no pony wall, where a braced wall panel would not be required. There's an example of one that has a crawl space, and there's an example of one with a full basement. Kind of the complete gamut of what we do. So here's a picture of the interior cripple wall. On the left, you'll see the new panel that has been added. It's a piece of oriented strand board, and it was put on the inside, and that became a very short but strong braced wall panel there. Underneath them and connecting the lower sill plate, the wood sill plate, to the concrete is what they call, I think Simpson calls those URFPs. I always have called them kind of the flexible side anchors because they're made to bend around the plate depending on how wide the foundation is versus how wide the um, sill plate is. But technically, they're called URFPs, which means Universal Retrofit Foundation Plate.
Can you talk about that hole up there? Is that something that every
Hmm.
braced wall should have?
Yeah, the hole in the oriented strand board there is to ventilate and to keep the OSB from creating a metal I'm sorry, a wood enclosed box that where moisture could gather. So periodically, you need to have holes in the braced wall panel. What typically happens is they spray the foundation or the cripple walls there, and then they put on and cover them with wood. If there's wood on both sides, there needs to be some type of an airflow to keep moisture or to let moisture out, and that promotes a drier space that is not less prone to getting growies or mold. Good question.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
So the how much or how long those panels need to be is probably one of the more complex items in the plan set, and they use a table for it. So the idea is this table, the one I'm showing here, is specifically for one-story conditions. They have two of them, one for one story and one for two-story. The total length of those exterior braced wall sections is based on how tall the cripple wall is, and then how many square feet the total square foot area of the building. So, for example, if we have a single story house, excuse me, with a 4-foot cripple wall and 1,400 square feet, there would need to be two braced wall sections of between 8 and 10 feet, depending if they had tie downs or not.
Mm. What are tie downs?
Tie downs are anchors that are bigger than anchor bolts, and they typically go into the foundation longer and go up the wall longer, and they are able to specifically, we call them tie downs or hold downs because they are made to be very, very strong in tension and or in shear. So they're great for seismic retrofits, but they are bigger than a standard anchor. In new construction, a lot of times they are put into the foundation and then they stick out and then they're bolted to the framing of the building. In retrofits, usually they are drilled in, or they'd have to be bolted onto the side, or they have to be poured into a new section. So typically with anchors here, they're drilled in on either end of that braced wall section to help hold it and keep it from moving.
Right.
Any questions here? It's a lot to take in, but I'm
Mm.
trying to keep it fairly general today. I just want you to be familiar. These are the pages that are really good to look at.
Yeah, and the pages you said, how big's the set again?
The set itself is about 22 pages.
That's right.
And it is, because it's a prescriptive plan set, it is submitted as a complete packet. So there'll be an application page, and Seattle's going to do their own version of the plan set. But you can get a pretty good idea on what the plan set is going to look like by going to the WABO website. They already have a section that they're using.
Mm.
So different jurisdictions will adopt it depending on what they like or what they don't, but they will adopt it as a complete set and then probably add an additional page for, like we're doing for Seattle requirements, or for exceptions or ways that we want to apply it. This, for us, the one or two family dwellings may turn into, we'll allow this in a fourplex, or we'll allow this in a townhome,
Mm-hmm.
depending. So to try to make it a broader application. The situation with the daylight basement is something we're trying to deal with because there are several of those in Seattle. Or
Mm-hmm.
when would it be possible to say we'll allow the project impact to be for 3 of the exterior wall lines, and then that daylight basement, that fourth wall line, will need to be engineered.
Mm.
Those
That'd be
are
nice.
things we've done in the past, but right now it's the up to the senior crick management, and we're working on kind of how to apply this best within the Seattle housing stock. A lot of people, Redmond and other places are looking at this, but Seattle really has the older history. So we talked to Tacoma or Everett or other places where there are older wood framed homes. So I'm excited to see what they come up with, and I'm really hoping we can you start using them soon. But right now, we're still using the existing plan set, so you can use the Project Impact. We're still using the existing Project Impact plan set that has been tried and true for many years now. Good question. The application process isn't going to change. The construction projects, and all construction projects, start the same way. Now you apply online, you go to the Seattle Services portal, and you set yourself up with a preliminary application, a preliminary construction application. They will ask for basic information, a basic site plan showing that you're in the city limits and where you are, what type of zoning is there, and then you submit plans and basically submit them for screening. The good thing about Project Impact is those drawings are submitted for screening, kind of like a subject to field inspection permit. You don't need an intake appointment. So where a construction intake appointment may be several weeks or a couple of months out, if you submit the project impact, they will be screened and taken in before that without an intake appointment. It still has plan review. There's a building plans examiner that will have to look at it, make sure that it meets the requirements for project impact, and that there's enough information to review. And then they may have corrections, but then the plan is issued and you would have building inspections. So they all start at the Seattle Services portal. I don't know, has anybody applied for a building permit? That's always a question I'm hesitant to ask. Or has anyone applied for a building permit for their home before, or a new family, new single family?
No response yet, but I'm sure it'll might come through in a minute.
I'm sure. So just to recap, we're working to build a more disaster resistant community. The project impact is a prescriptive program. It won't earthquake proof your home, but the idea is to improve this performance by anchoring to the foundation, bracing those cripple walls, and connecting to that first floor framing. The existing wood frame homes that are on a concrete foundation and that are 2 stories or less in height will probably qualify. And the idea is to simplify the process and to reduce the permit cost. And also, calculations or drawings by an engineer are not required for these. They are prescriptive, and they offer the homeowner a way to get a permit without having to hire an architect or engineer. It also allows you to submit without an intake appointment. The idea is we really want these older houses to be retrofitted, and we're trying to find several avenues to do that. If you are outside of the project impact, I would still recommend retrofits. If you have a complex house or a house that needs engineering, you may still be able to get an expedited permit, or what we call a subject to field inspection permit. But you would need an engineer stamped detail of what you're doing.
We did have Jim
Yeah.
said that they've applied for a permit for a current remodel, and Rick said no permit since COVID. And then we have a few questions coming in too.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Um, so JF was asking, is all the houses in Seattle built after 1990s or are, sorry, is all the houses in Seattle built after 1990s earthquake proof?
Uh, Probably. The houses
Chancery.
that were built after 1990s has had to build, or after the 80s actually. So if your house was built in 1990, it had to meet not just the Seattle, the what they call the Universal Building Code, but it had to meet the Seattle Residential Code, which required foundation anchors, braced panels, and connections to that first floor framing. So chances are pretty good if the house was built under the residential building code, which took effect in the late 80s, in the 80s, then you may already have that connection. If there's any doubt at all, I would recommend talking to somebody or looking for your permit history. But we can help you with that if you go to our website or if you want to ask a question, which is a great segue, actually. The Ask Us a Question is the bottom item on this slide. It says SDCI Ask Us a Question online. And on that page, there is now a chat service that during business hours when we're open and when the chat service is active, you can actually talk to somebody live. Just look for that blue circle with the chat bubble in it and click on it, and you can talk to either me or to another building plans examiner or to plans routing to talk about the process. And that's something we're trying to do because the ASC has been closed. So that's a great place to go if you have these type of questions.
Yeah, we have a few more questions coming in.
Great.
Um, yeah, Carrie wanted to know if we had any recommendations for contractors to work on items like this,
Mm-hmm.
especially for situations like 1920s daylight basement slash finished basement. I did put a
Okay.
link into the chat for the Master Builders Association website, but I thought
That
you might want to
that's a
touch base a
great,
little bit more.
yeah, that's a great place to start. So the city of Seattle really can't make recommendations on contractors because we have to review all plans impartially. We can't play favorites. But there are several groups out there. The Seattle Better Business Bureau actually has a section on contractors, and you can find out if the contractors have any complaints or liens against them. The Washington Association of Master Builders, I think, is another good one. And the what was the link that you put in?
The Master Builders.
Master Builders Association. They actually have groups that they will give you a list that specifies or specializes in this. So, good
Excellent.
question. There are other agencies that can help with that. We no longer have a list of people that have taken our class. That is became dated and was something that we just couldn't keep up with. So the Office of Emergency Management does offer classes to contractors, but I don't think they keep a list of who has gone through that class. So I'd recommend starting with WABO, Washington Association of Building Officials, and see if they have a list. And then the Seattle Master Builders is great. They are very involved with trying to improve houses in Seattle, and they, of course, will want you to go with one of their members, but they have lists of contractors that may be able to help.
And then Stephanie was wondering what the range of cost for retrofit that meets these what is the range of cost for retrofit that meets these qualifications?
That has gone all over the board, Stephanie. It's a
Mm.
good question. Sometimes they charge as little, or they tell us they charge as little as 6 to 8 thousand. Other ones are about double that. It kind of depends on the size of the house and what they're doing to retrofit. The cheapest type of retrofit is one that is done to a basement without using any type of cripple wall panels. If they have to do a finished basement and then retrofit that, that would be basically cutting into a finished basement and working from the outside or doing some very surgical improvements to the structure behind an existing drywall. And that could get pretty expensive. But you can look at some of the costs. There's a state building cost for new construction, and then this would be considered probably between 40 and 60% of what it would cost for new, to give you kind of a rough idea. Seattle is not or above the state average for costs, but it kind of depends on your contractor and on the scope of the work. Um, some will give you a range if you talk to a contractor saying, that seismic retrofits cost between this much and this much. Others will give you an estimate because they want your business. But it kind of depends. So, good question.
Yeah. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or type it in the chat.
Okay. Um, this page here, if you're going to do a screenshot, this is a good one. Our website is at the top. The WABO website and the plan set that I gave a couple example pages from is the second bulleted item, and the emergency management website is the third one. Now, the emergency management website, the Office of Emergency Management, may guide you back to us for earthquakes, but they also talk about emergency preparedness and landslides and earthquakes, and they're pretty broad. If you're interested in finding more information, I'd recommend checking both us and their website out. And then again, if you want to ask us a question, you're welcome to submit a question online. We've been doing that for a while. And we also have this new chat feature where you can actually chat with somebody online.
And I did put all those links in the chat at different points as we were talking too, so people can look through the chat if they want to copy those along with the
Nice.
screenshot.
Great. Well, April, thank you. I appreciate you putting those in the chat so people can cut and paste them out as well and grab them for what they need. There is one more. If you
Oh
could
yeah.
put there, we will have a survey for today's presentation.
Hmm.
So if you could put the survey in there, if you
Just did
have,
that. Yep.
great. If you have suggestions, or if you please take a moment and take the survey and let me know, kind of give me some feedback on how things went. Tell us what you'd like to see for next year's home fair. If there's other information or other types of permits, or maybe energy retrofits, or information that you'd like to see, I can definitely pass that on to the person who ran this one.
Hmm.
And we'd love to present information that would be useful for you. And especially as a Seattle homeowner, as a Seattle contractor doing work within Seattle, anything we could do to help with that. So, um, again, building a disaster resistant community and working to serve the public through the construction, Seattle Department of Construction Administration. So, um,
Yeah, Rose has a question.
sure.
And just to, and I'm going to do Jim's question first, then I'll go back to Rose. Jim had a great question. He was wondering if there's a way to reach either of us by phone or email or chat.
You're welcome to email me. Here is my contact information. Um, That's probably the best way to get a hold of me, Jim. You can call on the phone. We all have the web phone now, but often it'll go to voicemail. And I'm still very used to answering email and only check my voicemail a couple times a day.
And then Rose's question was, many years ago, Rose believes there were classes in Finney Ridge for homeowners similar to this. Are
Yes.
they, are there subject matter experts that still, and if so, associated with SDCI, do they still do classes like this? And if we could get contact you via the website, but you just answered that also.
Well, and I'm really excited. I
Oh,
started, yeah.
sorry, I know you're excited, but this made me excited. She also asked if there's ability to attach photos too when chatting, so that would be, yeah.
Okay. Well, yes and yes. So you can attach photos. If you set it up with the person you're chatting with, you can actually do either a phone call or a Teams meeting if that would be helpful. Most of the time, people attach plans and then that goes back and forth with a chat. But I've done both. So the Finney Ridge, I have a personal attachment to because I've done those. And the original slideshow that was done by Ray way back when. He and I worked in the Finney Ridge and the local libraries. The Finney Ridge, I don't know if they're still doing in-person classes there. And we've talked to them about doing some virtual classes, which I would be very interested in. I am trying to work with the Office of Emergency Management to get to do classes there too regularly. But we'll see kind of how it goes. The new plan set's thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into things, depending on when that comes into play. But yeah, I'm super excited to go back and do some in-person discussions, especially at places like the South Seattle Cultural Center or Finney Ridge or the what was it, the North Seattle Library is another one that we did in-person items with. What's interesting with that too is we get an idea on what type of projects people are interested in. Some people are interested in full retrofits. Others, especially, there was one at Finney Ridge where they talked a lot about how to finish a basement and how to do alterations to make the house into an attached accessory dwelling unit or into just a finished basement, and was the retrofit part of that. So, yeah, those
And
are
I,
both really exciting things.
yeah, and I wanted to clarify Rose's question because I just reread it. Rose was wondering if this subject matter experts that were at Finney Ridge or maybe still there, if they're affiliated with SDCI or not, which you kind of
Origin
answered, I think, but not, I didn't quite ask you correctly.
No, that's good. Good question. The subject matter experts that started that were contractors that were volunteering, and then let's see, it was me, um, and I'm trying to remember the other person's name, but now that I'm on the spot, I can't. But Ray was one, but he was a contractor and eventually a site inspector for SDCI, and then. Um, One of our permit process leaders who trained me did several of those, but yeah, they didn't have somebody that was directly affiliated, but there were plan sets and they used the tips that we have. And I worked on several of them that I was directly with the city of Seattle, but we focused a lot on the Finney Ridge Home Fair, and then we branched out into South Seattle Home Fair as well. So, good question.
And then there's some questions about the video being posted, which I'm writing some, putting
Yeah.
some links in there, but I thought for the people who are on the phones, maybe you could chat about that so they can hear, because I don't know if they can see the chat.
Sure. So we're recording this now, and there is closed captioning, but the um, videos will be available. I think it takes a couple of weeks, but the videos will be available on our website, and you can go to the connections page, or they'll be posted. A link will be posted on the SDCI or Seattle Department of Construction Inspections website when they become available. You can see the past videos and the previous slideshow on the Home Fair website now, and then those will be replaced by this presentation and hopefully the updated drawings once those are adopted. Good question.
Rose would
Thank
love
you.
to see more classes available, so any information is
Oh my,
appreciated for
oh
that.
my gosh, I would too. I would love to actually see more of a remote capability for doing this and taking advantage of the fact that we can all sit in our homes and do video discussions and just have kind of an open forum. We'll see how that takes off and what's available with that. But yeah, using this type of a platform gives an opportunity for that. So at least now you can submit your questions and you know you're going to get an answer through Q&A a lot faster than you used to. A lot more of them, a lot more people working on it. The chat is a great feature for answering questions during business hours during the week. And then hopefully we'll have this type of a home fair back and forth more often. I'm certainly would be willing to help with that. So here's hoping. Put that in the Survey Monkey. There you go. Tell them you
Right?
want to tell them you want to see a monthly, uh, just a monthly open forum meeting on coaching for building permits
Mhm.
or residential home questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another thing, and this is always something that the home fair had, but people were very hesitant to talk to the building inspectors. But it was really the building inspectors that had the knowledge of what was going on and what was needed in Seattle homes.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
very
had
true.
great information, but everyone was always hesitant to talk to them because they figured that they might show up at their house. Yeah, I would always go to them with my questions, especially on retrofits or
Hmm.
on what is done to an existing home or what do they deal with like one question that came up was old wiring in retrofits and how you really can't put old wiring behind this new sheathing and have it work very well. Or if you need to then immediately, what if you have to take it off and do work to the electrical that's ancient? So yeah, good question.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Right now, we've caught up on all of them on the chat.
Oh,
If you have any
great.
more, please feel free to throw them in there, or you can unmute yourself and ask if you'd like to also.
Sure. I think we had a couple engineers join us today. And are there any employees from SDCI that joined us today? We had a couple that were going to sign up. Yesterday, I was lucky enough to have my brother join us, so that was fun.
That is fun.
Yeah.
I don't notice anybody on the application, but on the app participants list, but
Don't recognize any names?
I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is Sunday. It's a
It
Sunday
is.
afternoon. I really appreciate you taking a Sunday afternoon to chat.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie, for coming.
Yeah.
She said bye. Rose, if you have extra time, could you summarize the steps and process for homeowners to take?
Yes, I could actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that slide. Um, and if I understand this correctly, you're talking about the steps a homeowner needs to take to get a construction permit and
I think she,
specific. Go ahead.
yes. She
Okay.
said yes, please. And I think probably specifically the retrofit, but
Okay. Well, it's handy for me to start talking about the construction process because it's the same way. It starts the same way for both projects, both types of projects, either prescriptive or construction. But the first thing you do is you go to what they call the Seattle Services Portal, set yourself up with an account, put the address of the project in, have an email that you can answer and they can send stuff to. And then you start a preliminary application process. From there, you go through the earthquake home retrofit has a plan set, and you would fill that out. You're going to use the one we have now, which is the existing plan set. The project impact plan set has that on the first page, and I think on just about every page is project impact. But it has the same setup in that the first thing you do is answer those 11 questions. And then the second one, the questions are a little different, but the second one is you fill out a floor plan of that crawl space or that basement. And if you're not sure how to do that, you might find a contractor to help you, or you can take a shot at it and then chat with one of our people here with the floor plan that you have. You can include photos of the crawl space. You can include past plan sets or the assessor's floor plan for the house to give us an idea. And from then we'll dial in, does this project qualify? Is it a good candidate for project impact? And be able to coach you best from there. If you're looking for examples for floor plans or elevations, you can look at what we call tips, our technical information bulletins there, and they have information on this is what a floor plan is. This is what a site plan is.
And those tips are also linked on the earthquake retrofit homepage too, right?
I believe they're on the construction page, and I'm hoping they're on the retrofit page. The retrofit page focuses on the prescriptive plan set, but you're always welcome to go to the construction and just general permit page and find those. And you could literally Google Seattle site plan and you'll get that tip.
Hmm.
Or better yet, Seattle floor plan. Off of the top of my head, I know that it's 303 and 303A are two very useful ones, but those are for all kinds of residential construction, not just project impact.
Oh, Jim had a question.
Sure.
Jim asked, I have a permit for a remodel. A plumber said I need to build a small wall and attach an existing interior wall to, sorry, and
That's fine.
let me try one more time. A plumber said I need to build a small wall and attach to an existing interior wall in which he can install a new drain pump, a new drain line, drain
Oh,
pipe. Do you know
sure.
if such a wall, which is just for plumbing, needs to meet standards for a non-bearing wall? Two top plates, no studs, no more than 24 inches apart, fastenings. Bolted
Kind
into
of
more.
depends on how big the wall is and if it needs to be able to support itself or if it would just be kind of a form of furring or boxing out to cover the plumbing. If it is less than a couple feet wide, then structurally it's not going to really be supporting much. Um, you said you had an existing permit, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Jim, it might be easy if you are okay with it to unmute. Yeah.
Okay, here I am. Yes.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, how are you? Thanks so much for doing this, both of you.
Sure.
I do
Yeah,
have an
April.
existing permit, and
Okay.
the plumber, he needs to run this drain pipe. It's probably about 6 feet from a washing machine to an existing, actually to the soil stack.
Right.
He said, just build a little wall because otherwise I can't go through the existing studs.
Right.
Um, because he's afraid they're load bearing. So just attach a little wall to the existing wall that he can send the plumbing lines through.
Kind of sounds
Eh,
like a furred out wall.
That's exactly what it is, April. I think that's a good description of it. And
Furred out wall, huh?
yeah, FURRED. So it's a non-structural wall that is used basically to support plumbing or electrical. And sometimes it is also used to create a space for insulation.
Okay.
It has no structural value. It doesn't do anything structurally. It is only there to cover either insulation, plumbing, or electrical up. So
And
they
it
call it,
sandwiches on top
yeah,
of the existing wall, right?
it goes on top of the existing wall.
Yes. So what are the standards I need to follow to build that?
Well, if you have an existing permit, is it a plumbing permit or a construction permit?
Construction from the city and a plumbing permit from the county.
Great. So I can answer this pretty easy. Ask your inspector. If you have a construction permit, tell him what you're looking to do, and he will probably give you the most flexible answer that will be the easiest to do at that location. If I have to give an answer, I have to give an answer out of the residential code saying that that wall would need to meet minimum wall requirements and connections. But with a furred out wall, if you talk to your building inspector, he can give you a really good idea on exactly what and how far they need to be.
Yeah, because he's right on site, so he can really see what's going
Yeah,
on.
he may be fine with a top plate and a bottom plate, and then something in between, or with studs that are maybe wider spaced, so that you don't have to put as many up. Especially with a furred out wall, and it doesn't have any structural value. But now that you have a permit that's issued, one of the best things to do, if you don't have an inspection for anything else, you can call for what is known as an advisory inspection, and they will either come out, or what they're doing more often now is they say, send me a photo, and then they call you. um, and
Right.
and they'll
I already did the advisory inspection.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was just by phone.
Yeah.
Only lasted, he only had 20 minutes.
Oh,
And so this is an answer a question I kind of need to be answered before they come out again, because
sure.
can't put the plumbing through it, rip it out, and then have them come out and say, no, this isn't right, and rip it
Uh-huh.
out and do it again.
Right. So what
How
I
do I
would
contact an inspector?
you can get a hold of the inspector in your district, and then contact them via email and send them a photo saying, my plumber wants to have me build uh, a, an extra wall to support the plumbing. He wants me to fur out from what might be a bearing wall. Is there anything that I have to do for that, or can I just put up minimal studs to support the plumbing?
Okay.
Okay. And then so what you would do is you would look for the inspector in your district. I don't want to take time from other people
No,
here.
that's fine.
I'm going to go back to, but there is we have a map actually, um, that shows the people that are in the district. But if you want to send me an email with your address, I can send you who your inspector is.
Great. Thank you
And
so
then
much. That's
you,
perfect.
you
Yeah.
bet. It's
Oh,
easy to get
Andrew.
into the weeds here quickly, but I also want to be able to help with general questions or questions about construction and residential construction. Are there any other questions with project impact?
We have one question. I haven't read through it
Oh,
yet. Yeah, there's a question about project impact from Andrew. He said,
okay.
our home has a subfloor that consists of 2 by 6 tongue and groove boards, car decking.
Oh,
We
right.
had a contractor that specialized in earthquake retrofit tell us that the subfloor construction disqualifies us from using project impact standards earthquake home retrofit plan set. I'm confused because I don't see a qualification requirement in the plan set that mentions subfloor construction.
There
That's my
isn't one.
question.
Yeah, good question. I appreciate you looking. There isn't a subfloor requirement, but they may be talking about the inability to connect to that subfloor framing, or there may be another issue that would disqualify it. Um, car decking typically wouldn't. Uh,
Hmm.
the the project impact stops at the first floor framing. Engineering, if you're doing a seismic retrofit to the whole house, will look at car decking as a diaphragm very differently than your standard floor with plywood TNG. So the car decking itself, depending on how it's nailed, can be still be pretty good diaphragm, but it is different than what we use for plywood today. Good question, but I
So
don't know of a disqualifying factor for car decking.
yeah, so if Andrew went through the question and answer sheet, and all 11 questions were answered, um,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know if it's yes or no, uh, correctly,
yes,
then he could move forward with the process. It'd be fine.
most definitely, yes. And you could definitely say, I have an existing car decking floor, I have an existing detail on the floor. Chances are pretty good the person who's reviewing the drawings would say, as long as you clip to the frame to floor framing, then you're good. But yeah, good question.
Yeah. If anybody else has any questions they want to type in or if they want to unmute and chat, feel free. Give it a few more minutes. We're dwindling down to 13 participants now.
Sure. I think I am going to stop the recording. If we're winding down, let me see how I do that.
Thank you guys all for joining us.
Yeah, not there.
Yeah, Rick, you're welcome, Rick. Doesn't look like we have any more questions.
Okay. Stopping recording at 15:20.